So we've looked at two skills already. First one, retreat. So this is the physical withdrawal from our usual life, stepping away from the world. The second one, relax. That's where we started to let go of the body and let go of the things that keep us stuck in the world of the five senses. So we've kind of moved from the external world to the body, and now we're really starting to look at the mind much more closely. So perhaps in your meditation practice in the last, well, how long has it been now? At least 18 hours maybe. You've started to let go of the body a little bit. Maybe you started to let go of the world outside a little bit as well. And you're starting to see perhaps the thoughts becoming more prominent in your mind. And so we're going to need some solutions, some strategies to deal with these. And luckily the Buddha, being a meditator, also went through the same problems, and he came up with some solutions that we're going to explore. It's easy to forget sometimes when we think about a historical figure like the Buddha, that he was actually a regular guy. So some forms of Buddhism have turned the Buddha into this godlike figure who knows all and sees all and controls billions of different universes. And that kind of makes it quite hard for us to think, okay, he's just like me. It makes it quite difficult. It turns him into something that's so different from us, this godlike figure, whereas he was actually a normal man, just like we are normal people. He lived a life which was a bit luxurious, probably the same level of luxury that we have in our own lives today. And he had some dissatisfaction and started to look for the meaning of life. So he wasn't always the Buddha. He was only the Buddha once he became enlightened. And before that, he called himself an unenlightened seeker. And we call that today the Bodhisattva. So when he was trying to find out what life and reality was all about, he tried lots of different ways. And we're going to be talking today about a particular sutta where he talks about what he did, what he came up with as an approach, a methodology almost to meditation. And it involves looking at thoughts. So when you see these thoughts coming into your mind, what do you do? Do you resent them? Do you get irritated with these thoughts that appear? Do you care for them? Do you follow them? Do you indulge them? Do you see the effect they have on your mind? So the Buddha, in this sutta that we'll be looking at, the two kinds of thought sutta, the Dvedhāvitakka sutta, he divided his thoughts into two different categories. So this is the first maths, first numbers for the session. So two different kinds of categories. So we've got to keep track of all the numbers here. What two categories? Unwholesome thoughts and wholesome thoughts. So that means thoughts that are good, thoughts that are bad, thoughts that are skillful, thoughts that are unskillful. So these two types of thought, he was able to characterize the kinds of thoughts that arose in his mind in these two ways. So I like the way the Bodhisattva, the Buddha to be, thinks here. He's just like, okay, let's just keep it simple. Keep it really simple. What's going on here? Okay, two types of thoughts. One's good, one's bad, wholesome, unwholesome, etc. So the unwholesome thoughts are divided into three types. That's the second numbers, so two, now three. Three types of unwholesome thoughts. We've already looked at one of them, sense desire. So Sense desire being the pleasures of the five-sense world, the pleasures of our experiential, sense-based experiences. So these sense desires, what have we got? Eyes, visions that we see. We've got ears, the sounds that we hear. We've got the tongue, the flavors that we taste. We've got the nose, the aromas that we smell. And we have the tactile experiences of our body, the things that we feel. Our whole life is made up of these experiences. And as I said before, it's very difficult sometimes to think that there could be other types of experience, the mental pleasures, the mental sufferings too that we have in our life. So the Buddha looked at sense desire and all of these sense-based experiences and said, okay, these are a little bit problematic for meditators, for people who want to get to know the mind better, who want to see the mind more clearly. Why? Because they take us away from the mental experience. You've probably seen this happen already in your own meditation experience, even here, maybe on the weekend, or back home when you're trying to practice on your own. You put off meditation all day, and then you think, okay, finally I'll do some meditation. You sit down, sit there for 2 minutes, think, need a cup of tea. So up you get, meditation gone. Or, you kind of think, I really should meditate, but maybe I'll just watch this program first. So it gets in the way of your meditation. Have you seen this happen in your own? Yeah? Okay, a lot of heads nodding, yes. So this is a big problem. Even if we don't want to take on the whole, okay, it's really sense desire, sense pleasure, it sounds really kind of biblical almost, but these things we can see if we look at the mind closely, they do get in the way of quietness in the mind. They do get in the way of us looking at what's going on. And so the Buddha actually characterized these three, we've only done one of them yet, these three unwholesome mind states. He characterized it into 5 different things. He said, these are unwholesome, unhelpful to myself, unhelpful to others. He said, these obstruct wisdom. They lead to vexation, and they don't lead to enlightenment. So all of these 3 unwholesome actions have these same characteristics. The second 2 are, so the second one is ill will. The third is harm or cruelty. So we have these 3 unwholesome thoughts that can come into our mind. Sense desire, ill will, and thoughts of harm or cruelty. Thoughts of ill will and harm arise as an aversion to something. So when we have thoughts of ill will in our mind, it's usually something we don't like, something we don't want. People come into our mind, we don't like them, we don't want them around. Unpleasant sensations come into the body, pain, for example, noises we don't like. This leads to thoughts of ill will. And the third one, thoughts of harm or cruelty, usually come out of dependence of that ill will. So you're sitting there thinking, oh, that annoying person at work. I don't like them very much. And then, if only they get fired, maybe I can get them fired. So this is the kind of cruelty, the harm that comes on dependence of this ill will. But it's a separate kind of thought, kind of a much worse thought. So all of these thoughts have those 5 different aspects. They don't lead to good results for me. They don't lead to good results for others. They obstruct wisdom. They cause problems. They have vexations. And the last one, they don't lead to nibbana. They don't lead to enlightenment. So it might be difficult to see how our thoughts can have these aspects to them. Like you're just sitting there thinking about ice cream, and you think, well, this doesn't have bad thoughts for other people. This doesn't end up with bad results for other people. But We talked last night about how sense desire is actually the cause of so many sufferings in our life. So when we desire something, it gets in the way of our renunciation. The renunciation that we're practicing through retreating is to develop our mind. So that leads to benefits to ourselves. It leads to benefits for our interactions with others. So maybe that's how you could see that something like wanting ice cream might have negative results in your mind, negative results for others. It does obstruct wisdom. Why? Wanting ice cream takes you away from wanting peace. Vexation, you're sitting there thinking, oh, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Okay, I'll get up and have ice cream. You get ice cream, what happens? You just want more ice cream. So it's kind of a problematic sequence of thoughts. And it doesn't give rise to enlightenment states. Why? Because this craving, this desire for sense pleasures is the wrong direction for our thoughts. If we want to attain peace, stillness, wisdom, then the Buddha says we should practice restraint, practice contentment. So this is how something like sense desire can obstruct our mind. And the same with ill will, the same with thoughts of harm. It's much easier to see with thoughts of ill will and harm how it affects others. If we have unpleasant thoughts in our mind about someone, usually when we encounter them, we take those thoughts into that encounter, we take those thoughts into that situation. I'm going to talk much more about that later on today, because ill will is probably the place that we really need to do a lot of work spiritually, and it's one of the easiest places to do it. Sense desire is more complicated for us because the sense desire that we have, we often can't see a problem with it. We can't see how it affects us. We can't see why we should practice restraint. We are the kind of creatures that just indulge our sense experience all the time, and so it's very difficult for us to see why would this be problematic. But ill will and thoughts of harm, it's much easier for us to see, okay, right, maybe there's some issues here with this kind of thinking. And so my teachers, they say, if you're going to put your effort anywhere, really, put it on the ill will. Don't worry so much about the sense desire. If you've got less hate in your mind, less thoughts of harm, then the sense desire will kind of take care of itself. You'll be happier. You won't need to get rid of that feeling of unhappiness by going out towards sensory objects. Does that make sense to you? Yeah? So it's sense desire and hate always go together in the Buddhist teachings because they're so closely linked. And it's usually that sense desire that arises out of a frustration in us that is the unpleasantness of not having our sensual desires met. So, and the ill will often comes out of sensory experiences that are painful for us. So we don't like these experiences. We like pleasant things. We like pleasant flavoured ice cream. We like nice massages. We don't like ice cream that has an unpleasant flavour. We don't like painful experiences in the body. So you can see how this binary way of thinking actually does make sense in terms of unwholesome and wholesome thoughts. So the unwholesome thoughts, to repeat, sense desire, ill will, thoughts of harm. And then there's the wholesome thoughts, which are the exact opposite. So we already looked at one, which was that concept of renunciation, retreat. So that directly counters the sense desire. So when we restrain, when we retreat, when we voluntarily go without something, that's renunciation. Like our precepts, we voluntarily gave up eating after midday, or we voluntarily gave up entertainments, adornments. And so that's a kind of restraint. So that's the kind of thing that is covered by renunciation, the first wholesome thought. The second is non-ill will. So non-ill will is kindness, love, metta. The third is non-harm. So that's compassion. So these are the wholesome kinds of thoughts. The Buddha says it's really important for us to be aware of these two types of thought. Why? Because the way our thoughts affect the mind is that the more we think in a certain way, so our mind becomes. The thoughts dye the mind. So if you keep on having thoughts of ill will, you start to develop a very hateful kind of mind. And perhaps you've got people in your life who are so resentful, so aggressive, so hateful in their own minds. You see it. You see it in them, yeah? And when you encounter these people, it's all you feel, this hate, this aggression, this resentment coming towards you. So these people, their thoughts are probably thoughts of ill will. So the opposite of that is, of course, of the people who you meet who are kind-hearted, generous, open, full of love. So these people, their minds have been conditioned by these beautiful positive states, these wholesome sorts of thoughts. So when it comes to these thoughts, we've got to be careful, the Buddha says. Firstly, they affect our mind, and if we're not careful, that's how we'll become. There's dangers, he says, in the kinds of minds that lead to unwholesome thoughts. The image that he uses is the image of a cow herd. So there's a cow herd, and he's got all his cows walking along the roads and the fields. And it's the time of the year when all the grain is really high, just before the harvest. So, cows, they like to eat a lot, and they'll eat anything. So if he's not careful, those cows will start eating the crops. And then, of course, he'll get into big trouble. He'll get people angry at him, their farmers will be very upset, maybe he'll get beat or put into prison. And so these cows need to be kept under control somehow. So you see a cow herd with a stick, kind of just nudging the cows this way, nudging the cows that way, to stop them from straying into these fields. So these fields are like these unwholesome states of mind. If we're not careful, our mind will stray into these fields and the cows will eat all of these unwholesome thoughts up, and then we've got these negative consequences that will come. But the other is these wholesome thoughts. And he says that this is like the time of the year when all the crops have been brought in. If we don't have these unwholesome thoughts, we've only got wholesome thoughts in our mind, then it doesn't matter where our mind goes. Our mind can stray amongst these fields of wholesome thoughts and not get into any trouble, not get into any danger. And so he says, when our mind has all these beautiful wholesome thoughts in it, we can just relax. We don't need to control the mind too much. And that's like these cows just straying through the fields and the cow herd just sitting underneath the shade of a tree, just enjoying the good states. So this is how the Buddha tells us to divide our thoughts into these two categories so that we can see the effect of negative thoughts and understand their drawbacks, and also see the effects of positive thoughts and understand their benefits. So this sounds really simple, doesn't it? You kind of just have to divide your thoughts into two categories and that's it, you're set. But we're going to need some mindfulness to do this. We're going to need some awareness of our thoughts. And this is often the difficult thing to get going. So that's why in the previous meditation sessions and the previous skill sessions, I really emphasized this movement from the external to the internal, and that process of developing mindfulness naturally by becoming very relaxed, very still, the body calm. When the body is relaxed and calm, the mind naturally becomes calm, and then mindfulness, natural mindfulness, develops all by itself. So we need that mindfulness in order to see the thoughts. As I said this morning, so often when thoughts come into our mind, it's already too late. Mindfulness is gone because we haven't been aware enough to prevent them. And then the next thing you know, the cows have eaten all of the grain and you've been thinking about things for minutes. Maybe the entire session you've been thinking about stuff, and only then suddenly, whoops, I meant to be watching my breath. I meant to be concentrating on the body. Only then does mindfulness reappear belatedly. So the job of mindfulness is to guard the mind. So we need to develop it naturally. If we have a mindfulness that is forced, if we use a lot of willpower, put a lot of pressure onto our mind, you can sustain really sharp mindfulness for a little while, but then you become tense, you get a headache, you get stiff, and you end up feeling quite tired, quite exhausted. So it's much better in your meditation practice to develop mindfulness that is natural and easy, not too tense, but not too loose. The classic image in the suttas is a lute player. The lute is kind of like a guitar instrument, and there's this monk called Sona, and he's having a bit of trouble with his meditation. And the Buddha says, well, when you used to play the lute, how did you tune your instrument? You know, if you had your strings too tight, then they'd make the wrong note and they could snap. But if you had the strings too loose, they'd make the wrong note and they wouldn't vibrate enough. You need to get the strings exactly right so that the note sounds beautiful. So this is what we need to do with our mindfulness. So it's not enough, though, just to have mindfulness watching. We need to have a little bit of wisdom. And the image here is if we have a guard standing at a doorway, guarding all our treasure would be all our positive mind states. If we have this guard and they're just standing there, just going aware, 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 but they don't have any wisdom, if someone comes to take away the treasure, someone coming, going in, coming out with treasure, leaving, goodbye. It's mindfulness, it's aware, but there's no wisdom there. So we need what's called wise attention. I mentioned that this morning. Yoniso manasikara, wise attention. This is seeing the drawbacks, seeing the benefits of certain states. So if we have this wise attention, we can see, okay, this thought that's appearing in my mind now is unwholesome. It doesn't lead to good results for me. It doesn't lead to good results for others. It obstructs wisdom, causes vexation, and won't lead to peace, nibbana. It won't lead to stillness. So that's the function of mindfulness with wise attention. And that's how it works in our minds. The other thing we're going to need is a little bit of support, a bit of a lift. And that comes in the form of the 4 right efforts. So the 4 right efforts are the things that help us outside of meditation, but mostly inside of meditation, to develop positive states and to abandon the negative ones. And they're divided into 4 categories, 2 which are wholesome, 2 which are unwholesome. So the 2 that are unwholesome are, we try to prevent unarisen, unwholesome states from arising in our mind. The second is we abandon already arisen, unwholesome states in our mind. It's quite complicated language. So basically it's like we don't want any new states that are unwholesome to come, and the ones that are there we want to get rid of. Perhaps it's like if you are in a boat and you've sprung a leak, water is coming in. So the first thing you want to do is to plug the leak, yeah, to prevent more water from coming in. And then you can abandon, get rid of the water that's in the boat. If you just start trying to abandon the thoughts that are there already, get the water out of the boat, you've still got this leak and there's still water coming in. That's why it's very important to try to prevent these unwholesome thoughts from arising and then try to abandon the ones that have already arisen. The unwholesome thoughts in these 4 categories are the 5 hindrances, which I'll look at in a few moments. And then the wholesome practice that we do in terms of right effort is we develop wholesome states of mind. And then the trick is to maintain those wholesome states of mind. So those 4 right efforts: prevent unwholesome states, abandon unwholesome states, develop wholesome states, and maintain wholesome states. So this is all very binary, yeah? It's all like wholesome, unwholesome, good, bad, develop, get rid of. So it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy for us to understand what the Buddha was trying to get us to think about when he developed this strategy, this methodology for our meditation. But the things that we need to work with in our mind are not always easy, and sometimes they're quite difficult. And these are known as the hindrances. So these are the unwholesome states, the things that cause us a lot of difficulties. Buddha, always giving these beautiful images to us to help us, talks about our mind being like a bowl of water. Beautiful and clear, completely still. This is the kind of mind of a Buddha, of an enlightened being. We want to have a mind that is completely still, completely clear, that we can see our reflection in. So when we look down to this bowl of water, we can see ourselves very clearly. So this is the image the Buddha gives us to suggest what a beautiful, still mind, clear mind, full of clarity might look like. So that's the ideal. The first thing he talks about is the first hindrance, sense desire. So he says, sense desire is like colours, dyes, thrown into water. So when you see these beautiful swirls of colour, they're very distracting, very enticing. You can't see yourself in the water anymore. So this is the first image he uses. And I guess things have changed from the Buddha's time. You know, if this was kind of like, you know, a real kind of sense desire image at the time of the Buddha, you can only imagine what he'd think about the internet and, you know, our world of consumerism and all the pleasures that are available to us today. Maybe this is a more pertinent image to us, like an image of a shopping centre just full of so many colours, so many shapes, so many objects, things for all the senses, things for your hair, things for your eyes, things for your ears, everything's there, things to eat, whatever, available to us. So sense desire is this hindrance. And as I said before, when we sit down to meditate, this is usually one of the things that takes us away from our meditation, often quite quickly. So we have to recognize it as being a hindrance. And if we can recognize it as a hindrance, when it comes into our mind, then we can say, okay, hindrance is coming, that's the mindfulness. The wise attention is like, okay, is sense desire wholesome or unwholesome? Or it's unwholesome, okay. Should I develop this mind of sense desire? Should I get up and have a cup of tea? Or should I retreat from this thought of sense desire? What does the Buddha say? Okay, right, this is the process of yoniso manasikara in the mind. It doesn't want to get involved with a hindrance. It only wants to get involved with good qualities of the mind. So when this is in our mind, it distorts our experience. When we've got an object of sense desire in our mind, we can't relax. We can't get any peace. We keep on returning to it over and over again, like that dog eating the bone. When it's in our mind, it can very quickly become something that we want to get in outside of the meditation. So we get up and we go to the fridge, we open the door, we look in, and this is how we destroy our mindfulness. The second hindrance that the Buddha talks about is ill will. So that's the bubbling up of anger, a boiling, bubbling pot of hot water. And this is very much like the experience of ill will in our minds. When we have ill will towards someone, it bubbles up inside of us. We get hot, we get bothered, and the mind is seething. And we can feel it happening inside. So when we feel this experience, if we've got enough mindfulness, we know, well, this is an unwholesome state of mind. This is a hindrance. When there's ill will in your mind, that's all you can see. When a thought comes into your mind of someone you don't like, it just returns to it over and over again. And it causes so many troubles. It takes you so far away from peace, so far away from stillness. Perhaps a contemporary version would be, just understanding how difficult it is to control our ill will. How if we are unable to restrain it, it can really get out of control very quickly. So there's a danger there. There's a drawback. We get upset in the mind. We get upset in real life. The more we turn to thoughts of ill will, the more they stay in the mind, the more dangers we have to our mindfulness, our peace, and the more likely we are to have difficulties outside of our meditation practice in our life. That's why ill will is regarded as a hindrance. That's the second hindrance. The third is sloth and torpor are the words that are used to describe these states in this hindrance. We have a picture of slimy water covered in algae, and this is very much like the feeling of sloth. Do you know what sloth is? Sloth is kind of like that feeling of tiredness, that feeling of, I just can't be bothered, I don't want to move, that feeling of sinking in your meditation practice. Sometimes it feels very heavy, you just kind of feel yourself falling down. This is what sloth is. And torpor is the mental aspect, the kind of emotional depression or feeling of ennui, feeling of mental sinking, not bodily. So there's these two things, this kind of bodily and mental aspect towards this, in this hindrance called sloth and torpor. So we can recognize that outside of our life, outside of our meditation life rather, in terms of procrastination, not wanting to do things, can't be bothered, and it's this slowness of the body, this kind of depression in the body that is like the slime that covers our beautiful clear water. Whereas the mental aspect in meditation is this kind of, falling asleep. So sloth and torpor, this is going to take us away from our mindfulness because we're going to fall asleep. We're not going to be able to be mindful anymore. So this is a hindrance for us. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and remorse. So restlessness we understand. As soon as we sit down, suddenly we've got 1,000 things that we need to do. And we get up and we go and we do them. We are like a slave to our restlessness. It makes us go here, go there. It makes our mind go back, go forth. Basically, it's taking us away from our object of meditation, taking us away from peace, taking us away from stillness. And the image the Buddha used was this waves on this bowl of water that is our mind. This waves, this choppy, this wind blowing the water, disturbs the water. We can't see our reflection clearly. So this is the restlessness. Takes us away, usually to the future, usually planning something, wanting to be somewhere, wanting to go somewhere else, getting up and going. This is the restlessness. And the remorse part of this is the past. So regret coming into the mind. Oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish that thing hadn't happened. I remember that person. I hurt them. This is the remorseful aspect of this mind. So the restlessness takes us to the future. The remorse usually takes us to the past. So this is the fourth hindrance. You can see this when you sit down. You know, we all like to pretend we're meditating very good, and then you kind of close your eyes, but you do sneak a quick peek at the clock. This is the restlessness, wanting to be somewhere else. You just sat down and suddenly you want to get up and go again. Or the remorse, not spending our time well. Regret appearing in our minds. And the last hindrance that the Buddha talks about is doubt. The doubt is represented by a bowl of muddy water. And the muddy water is the dirt is churned up. You can't possibly see your reflection in a bowl of muddy water. And the Buddha says this is specifically in regards to indecision about what is good to do, what is wholesome, what is unwholesome, what is the right way to behave, what is the right path that we should tread as spiritual people. And so, is this indecision, what is the right way to practice? What is wholesome? What is unwholesome? And it's the not knowing that causes our mind to have confusion in it. And sometimes you'd be sitting there in meditation and you'd be like, does this really work? Is my mind becoming clearer? Am I doing this the right way? Am I just a bad meditator? Do I not know how to do this? Is the teacher wrong? Are the meditation instructions wrong? Perhaps they don't work for me. This is the kind of doubt that the Buddha was talking about, because it destroys our mindfulness. It pollutes it in the same way that the dirt in the water makes the water muddy. It pollutes our mind. So these 5 hindrances are the things that disturb our meditation, but it's a survival skill here, learning to retrain our mind, to be aware of them, not only because it's going to help our meditation, but because it's going to help our life. These 5 hindrances, these things don't just appear in our mind during meditation, they appear all throughout our life. So you know when you sit down, you've just gotten to work, you're at the office, sit down in front of the computer, turn the computer on, and the first thing that comes into your head, I just get a coffee. You get up, you go get a coffee. So that's the sense desire, that's the restlessness, it takes you away from your important work. So other things like anger coming into your mind, you can see that it's a hindrance in your interactions with other people. You know that it's a hindrance to peace, a hindrance to harmony. So these things, these hindrances, when they appear in our mind, they cause troubles in our life. These are the things that we have to deal with in our life. These hindrances are not just mental things. These are the things that we face day in, day out in our experience. So when the Buddha talks about abandoning these hindrances, how do we do them? Firstly, we need to develop that mindfulness. Secondly, we need to have the wise attention that sees these as disadvantageous to our clarity. And then we need to be willing to let them go. All of these hindrances have their own antidotes as well. So something like ill will, we can use metta as an antidote, loving kindness. Something like sense desire, we have renunciation as an antidote. So all of these things, we'll talk more about how these things work later, but one thing I want to take away from today is wholesome, unwholesome. 4 right efforts to prevent, to abandon, to cultivate, and to maintain. So these are the things I want to take away from today. We're going to close our eyes and do a recapitulation, and then we'll finish up. Just coming back to that relaxed state again. So it's possible for us to train our mind. When we have mindfulness, we're aware of our thoughts. We can choose to follow thoughts, to let them go, to abandon, develop. When we have mindfulness and wise attention, we see clearly. Thoughts of sense desire, ill will, harm arise in our mind. They always lead to bad results, to negative consequences. And when thoughts of restraint, thoughts of love, thoughts of compassion always lead to positive, good consequences. Knowing this, let us abandon these unwholesome thoughts. And let us develop wholesome thoughts. Allow this intention to really take root in your mind. I will abandon these unwholesome thoughts. I will cultivate wholesome thoughts. And then relaxing the mind again, gently opening the eyes. So do take these intentions into your practice for the rest of the day. So from now, you have a couple of hours to do walking meditation, sitting meditation, to go out, enjoy the sunshine, to have a cup of tea, enjoy being here, and have a good time at Jhana Grove. And I'll see you later on.